Thanks so much for joining us this morning. It's a new day. It's a new month. I think some of you turned over a new leaf and you got to church on time this morning. Was it because you forgot to set your clocks forward? Never mind. I had a whole joke, but it didn't go over well first service either, so I'll just scratch it from the beginning, salvage what's left. But I'm thankful you're here. And whatever it is that brought you to church, I'm so excited that you're with us. And I want to ask you to stay with us for the next 4 weeks, because we just finished a teaching series from the book of Romans, and it took us 8 months. And it was a long series. It was a detailed, in-depth series. I hope that you experienced some transformation through it. I know as I worked through the book of Romans, I understood the gospel and the good news of Jesus that I've known about and heard about my entire life in a completely different way. And it changed my heart and my mind and my relationship with God. I pray that you've experienced that as well. But we're beginning a brand new series, and it's only 4 weeks long, not 4 months, not 4 years, just 4 weeks. And we're calling this series Making Change. And the whole series, if we'll commit to understanding and asking God to open our minds and our hearts, He'll teach us how we live with what we have. We understand that the good news of Jesus, the gospel, it literally touches every area of life, right? It transforms us from the inside out. And what God has to say, so much about what God has to say is about what we do and how we live with what we have. I think this series is going to be powerful. It's something that preached to me long before I'm here preaching it to you, and I've experienced some of the change that I'm going to share with you over the course of the next 4 weeks. But anytime we talk about money and finances and resources and the things we have and the things we buy and the things we save and the money we spend, we get a tendency to just kind of turn it off. We think we know where the story's going. We've heard it all before, but maybe it'll be something a little different for you. And I encourage you to stay with us through this series. But if you don't, I want you to take away 4 big things. There's 4 emblems on the screen behind us, and they represent the 4 different themes or the 4 different truths that we're taking out this month. And the first one is this: less is more. The next one is stress is bad, giving is good, and tomorrow matters. All right, repeat those with me. Less is more, stress is bad, giving is good, tomorrow matters. One more time. First service did it twice. Less is more, stress is bad, giving is good, tomorrow matters. All right, one more time because you got an extra hour of sleep. Less is more, stress is bad, giving is good, tomorrow matters. That'll help me sleep because now you can't tell me you didn't know what we talked about. Today we're going to talk about the first theme, the first idea that less is more. Less is more. Now, I don't know about you, but when you think about those words, that sounds so wrong. Because if you're anything like me, you've been programmed to think your entire life, less isn't more is more, right? That seems obvious. Less is not more is more. If $1 is good, $2 is better. If one fishing rod is good, I'm not going to tell you how many is better, right? Less is not more is more. And we've been trained to think that way. We've been trained to live that way. And if we're not careful, we will pursue more with all that we have. I've done this. I've been there, and I'm coming out of it as I understand God's word and how freeing it can be to see life through a less is more lens. But before that, one of the things I really believe that more is more of was food. Anyone else have that mentality when it comes to what you eat? You don't have to raise your hand. Don't point. I did raise my hand. Confession time. There's other churches that do that. But more is more mentality. And one of my favorite restaurants is Chipotle. Anyone else like Chipotle? And I love it. I do. I love it because I like the food that they serve, and I like how much of it you can get. If you've never been to Chipotle, you get in this long line. Usually it's a pretty long line. You get to the end of the line, and you're at a counter. And the lady or gentleman behind the counter asks what you want, and you get a burrito. Why would you get anything other than burrito? They have salad, but who eats salad at a place like that? So you get this big burrito, and they put the shell down. They warm it up, and they begin passing it down the aisle, or down the counter. As you go down the counter, you get to pick and choose what you want in it. Like they'll put whatever kind of rice you want in it, beans, and then you get to choose the meat. And there's like all kinds of toppings or fillings that they'll put on your burrito. And so when I go to Chipotle, I get everything. I mean, everything you don't have to pay for. Some of it's extra, and I'm too cheap for that. But everything that you get for free. I don't even really like mushrooms, but when I go to Chipotle, because they're free, just throw them on the burrito, right? We'll see. We'll see how they are. You know, fajita vegetables, lettuce, any of it. Put it all on there. And as we work down, I'll take some of this, I'll take some of that, take some of this, take some of that. And I get down, and my favorite part is like watching them try to fold and roll the burrito. Because I know what I've done, the first three people, I've filled it up. And I just want to see how skilled are they, and like 50% of the time, it overflows. It just breaks the shell, and I say, I'll eat it however you give it to me. But sometimes less is not more. When I first started college, as a freshman in college, and some of the guys that live next to me, they say, hey, Adam, they were a year ahead of me, we've got this really great chicken wing place. Anyone like chicken wings? The best part of this place, all-you-can-eat wing Monday, $6.99. Now, that's like a really good deal. It's been a few years, but it was a really good deal. And so that Monday rolled around, and we went to chicken wing place, and we were there. I didn't even know if the wings were good. I really didn't care. It was $6.99 for all I could eat. And so they brought the first basket. I ate all of those. Brought the second basket, ate all of those. Brought the third basket, ate all of those. Because the sermon's being recorded, I won't tell you how many baskets came to our table, but I ate all of them. Less is not more, more is more. And as we got up and we left the restaurant, I overflowed. Have you ever had that problem before where you've eaten so much? It's got to go somewhere, and it just comes back up. I love the delayed reaction. Yeah, I saw that coming because you've been there. That's okay. One is good. Sometimes two isn't better, right? One is good, sometimes two isn't better. We're going to talk through this theme of less is more. That was the only real gross illustration I had, I promise. I have other ones that I think are funny. I'm sure you won't. But less is more. And it's not a random concept. It's not something I came up with. It's a principle that comes straight from God's Word. And we're going to see it in several different places. If you look through His Word, you see that Jesus talks about less is more. Valuing things that really value are going to get you so much further than just trying to value everything. But more is not more. Less is more. And in honor of that theme, we're only going to look at one verse of Scripture today. I mean, you know how much Scripture I like to pour into a sermon. Sometimes it's like a whole chapter. It's sometimes a whole book over the course of 8 months. But today, just one verse with the idea that if we go through less, you might walk out with more. And so the verse for this morning is Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 6. In Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 6, just very simply says this. He says, better is one handful with what? Tranquility. Better is one handful of tranquility or peace than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. And it's just such a simple illustration. We've all got two hands, and we understand what he's saying. Better is one handful in a peaceful life. Better is one handful in tranquility than two handfuls in chasing after the wind and stress and frustration and anxiety and never having enough and toil and just the life where you're never going to accomplish, you're never going to get all that you want to get. Better is one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with chasing after the wind. How is one handful better than two? Well, because it seems like two would be better, right? If you get two handfuls of things. But if you have two handfuls of things and someone needs a hand up, you have no hand to extend to them, right? But if you have one handful and someone needs a hand up, you can reach down and help them up. If you have one handful and someone is in need and needs something, you can take from what you have and give it to them. You have a free hand. If you have one handful and someone needs comfort, you have a hand to comfort them. If you have one handful and you just want to go fishing, right? You still got a hand to go fishing. You got a hand to sleep on, right? Better is one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Better is one handful than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. It's a totally different way of life. It's a totally different way of thinking about things. It's a totally different way of life than the world and the culture try to tell us we should live. The world tells us that two handfuls, if you had more hands, fill those hands, get as much as you can, as fast as you can, and hold on as tight as you can. But the Bible tells us and God tells us better is one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. It's this idea that less is more. less is more. And we want less of what doesn't matter so we can experience more of what does. Right? We want less of what doesn't matter so we can experience more of what does. And this requires that we stop and define what matters. What matters? If you're taking notes on your bulletin, I know everybody is. I left you 3 blanks there. Try to think of like the top 3 things that matter to you. Just 3. 3 things. What are like the 3 things that matter most to you? When we ask that question, maybe there's like 5 things or 10 things or 15 things or 20 different things that come to mind, and we instantly fill out the 3 lines and we're looking for more because we have that 2-handful mentality, right? We want more, we want more, we want more. But think about it this way. If we only had a month or 2 left to live, I mean, hopefully that's not a situation for anyone in here, though none of us know, right? Doesn't matter how old or young we are. If you just had a month or 2 left to live, it changes your perspective. What matters most if you only had a little bit of time? There was a recent poll on social media I was reviewing, and they asked a very similar question. They said, if you only had a month or 2 to live, what matters most? And as I was reading the comments down below and the things that people said, it was like the same things over and over. They said, my relationship with God matters most. If I only had a couple months to live, and I only had time for a little bit of things or pursue it a little bit, my relationship with God is one of the things that matters most. Some people said, my relationship with my spouse, that's what matters most. If I only had a little bit of time, I would change the way I live with my spouse, or my relationship with my family, or time with family, or friendships, or the relationships that I've cultivated through life. That's what matters most. With that question in mind, nobody said the kind of car that I drive, right? Because if you only had a little bit of time, that doesn't really matter that much. Nobody said the kind of countertops they put in their house, or the new phone in their pocket, or their followers on Instagram or social media. What mattered most were the people and the experiences with the people that they love. What mattered most was the relationship that they had with God, or the relationship that they desired to have with God. When we look at life through that perspective, when we define what matters most, often we'll realize that we spend so much of our life pursuing things that don't really matter at all. And if we stop for just a minute and we put the clarity around it, define the things that matter most, we would realize that so much of our time and so much of our energy and so much of our effort and so much of our focus is spent pursuing things that really don't matter at all. And we get this mentality that's what I don't have is what I need, right? What I don't have is what I need. I've got a handful, or I've got handfuls, but I want more. And what I don't have is what I need. And we know that Jesus said, your life does not consist in the abundance of your possessions. And we've probably read the verse and we've heard the story and we understand what Jesus is saying. And in fact, many of us, all of us, probably believe that with our mind. But if we looked at our lives, we're living a completely different way. That our life does not consist in the abundance of our possessions. That if we go through life trying to accumulate as much as we can, if we fill up 2 handfuls, we have no space to be the person that God has called us to be. If we go through life and we try to fill up 2 handfuls, we have no space to be the follower of Jesus that he has called us to be. And so for the next few minutes together, we're going to look at 3 different steps and just kind of oversimplify this. 3 different steps, 3 different keys, 3 different themes to living a less is more life. And so we're going to embrace it and learn it and understand it and go out and apply it. The first thing is this: if you're taking notes, just cut back. Cut back. We want so much stuff, right? And every time we turn on the TV, we see ads. Every time we go somewhere, we see stuff that we don't have, that we think we need. And the truth is, I'm right there with you. Every time I go out, I find things that I really like. And if I really convince myself, I might buy it. And I buy an outfit I really like. And I bring it home and I walk in the closet I've walked in 1,000 times. And I see that closet is full. Anyone else have that problem? Anyone else search for a house based on closet space? Because we've got so much stuff. And we know it, but yet we continue to consume things. And it's not just our closet space that shows that we need to cut back, is it? Some of us have overflowed a closet into another closet, and we've overflowed the closet into a spare bedroom that used to be a bedroom. There might be a bed in there somewhere, but we haven't seen it in a really long time. And we've overflowed that, so stuff has gone in the attic. And then the attic is full, and so then stuff goes out in the garage. And I think you're supposed to keep a car in a garage, but so very few of us can, right? Because there's so much stuff. We just consume and consume. And when the garage fills up, what do? Yeah, we go out and pay someone to give us space to store our stuff we're not going to use. A lot of confession today. All of Romans, we didn't get this much response. We're talking about cutting back, and you guys the Spirit is working on your hearts. But it doesn't stop us. We know all of this stuff that we have. We know we have so much stuff. We've got closets full of stuff, and yet we still walk in and think, I've got nothing to wear, right? And we got clothes in boxes that we haven't seen in years, and yet we still go out and we buy more stuff. Jesus said that your life does not consist, our life does not consist in the abundance of our possessions. And if we're going to embrace a less is more lifestyle, if we're going to surrender to less is more living, we've got to consider cutting back on our consumption. And decide that we want less stuff and more friends. We want less stuff and more time with family. We want less stuff and more experiences. We want less stuff and more of what matters most. We want less stuff and more of Christ. We've got to cut back. My guess is all of us could probably find areas where we could cut back. And that's the first step to live in a less is more life. The second step is maybe even more difficult. It's to clear out. Clear out. I was reading a book not too long ago talking about how to live a more simple life and focus on Christ, and the author said you need to cut back like your life depended on it. And I thought when I read that, I thought that's not true because my life doesn't depend on, clear out. You need to clear out like your life depends on it. I said that's not true because my life doesn't depend on clearing out. But as he continued to share and explain in the book, I realized that if I'm going to have the space to be the husband I want to be, I've got to clear out some of the clutter of my life. If I'm going to have the space to be the preacher I want to be and lead the church the way I want to lead it, I've got to clear out some of the clutter that's cluttering not just my life, but my soul and my mind as well. The same thing is probably true. You probably got some things you could clear out like your life depended on it because other things matter more. And when we allow clutter to build up in our lives and stuff just to accumulate, it produces stress and frustration. It doesn't allow us space, and it ultimately clutter our souls. I really am in this process. I have been getting rid of stuff like crazy. I've got so much stuff, and it's so embarrassing because I was in the garage a few weeks ago, and I realized I have boxes of stuff that I moved 2 years ago when we came to the land that I haven't opened in 2 years. I don't even know what's in the box, but I know I don't miss it. And so I did something this week that I never thought I would do. I took one of those boxes, and I didn't even open it. And I may come to regret this, I'm not sure. I took that box off the shelf, and I just took it out, and I put it in the trash before it went out. And I don't know, I may come to regret it. I may miss what's in it, but it said Carissa's most valuable stuff on it, so probably not. She's not here today, so don't tell her that part. No, I really am, though. I didn't throw Carissa's stuff away. I did, some of it, not boxes of it. And I'm throwing stuff away. I'm getting rid of stuff. I'm giving it away. I'm selling it. All of us probably have space and things that we should clear out. I mean, I'm right there. I've got closets overflowing with stuff. I have my main closet in the guest room. I've got another closet in the other guest room, and I just keep all my suits in there, and Carissa's pretty jealous. She says, I think the wife is supposed to have more closet space than the husband. And I said, well, I don't know. I've got this whole closet full of suits. She says, you haven't worn a suit to church in 1.5 years. Why do you have so many suits? I was like, well, you're right. I'm giving them away. So if you think you are the size I used to be, I've got clothes for you. But we need to clear out. We need to clear out. It is so freeing. It frees our mind when we get rid of some of our stuff. Isn't it true that when we have so many things, so many options, it's difficult to decide what we're going to do? I mean, if you have Netflix, there's like an infinite amount of movies on there. Carissa and I, we can sit on the couch all night and not land on one movie because there's so many different options. If we go to the theater, we know when we get there, there's like 8 options. 4 of them have things in it we don't want to see, so there's 4 options. We can pick a movie pretty quickly as we stand in line. But when you have so many options, it's hard to decide. The same thing's true in restaurants. You go to a hamburger joint, what are you going to get for dinner? Hamburger, right? Mexican, you know what you want. If you go to somewhere like the Cheesecake Factory and they've got 11.5 pages of options, you'll never decide. And you'll sit there and you'll stare at it like you don't know what to choose. But the same thing is true of our lives. But if we clutter our lives, it clutters our souls, it's difficult to decide, and it's difficult to follow Christ. It's difficult to focus on Christ. Better is one handful with peace and tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Better is one handful with peace than two handfuls with chasing after the wind. The final step we're going to do today, and it's even more difficult. They get more challenging, but the final step is just to pay off some debt, to pay off some financial burdens that you have over you. And next week we're going to talk about the idea that stress is bad. This week it's right, less is more. Next week stress is bad. Does anyone enjoy financial stress? Yeah, no one in first service either. It's crazy. None of us like the stress of walking to the mailbox not knowing if we're going to be able to pay the bill that may or may not arrive, right? And I've heard so many people say, and I understand where they're coming from, but so many people say, I can never pay off all my debt. And that may be true right now, but you can pay off something, right? You can pay off something. You can get rid of it, and it becomes infectious in your life, and it's fun, and it's exciting. But as we're going to see next week, it also honors God when God's people aren't subject to a bunch of lenders directing the way we live our life. So next week we're going to talk more about that and see how God motivates us to pay off and over time to get out. But it's fun, and it's much more fun to live life debt-free. I told you many times, Carissa and I, when we got married, we decided we wanted to be debt-free. We weren't. We had some I owed some money on my truck, and Carissa had student loans, and so we didn't want to go into any more debt. We could barely pay off what we already had, and so as we decided to get married, or I decided, asked her, and she agreed, and we found a place we were going to live after we got married, and we rented it, and Carissa moved in about 3 months before we got married, and I took all of her stuff over there for her, like a good fiance, and she called the next day, and I asked how it was going. She said, it's really great, starting to set things up. She's like, I'd really like a place to sit. Like, you got like 1,100 square feet of floor space. You got plenty of room to sit. She's like, no, Adam, like, really, I want a couch. It's like, okay, so, we're getting ready to get married. Let's buy a couch. And so we went to the furniture store. Furniture store I drove by a million times. I'd never been in a furniture store in my entire life. And we went over to the couch, and like 18 different salespeople wanted to help us find the right couch. And we looked at them, and you would not believe, or maybe you've looked for a couch, how expensive couches are. Like, how many zeros can go after the price on a couch? Like, they're importing leather from countries I didn't know existed and swearing it's the most comfortable seat you'll ever sit on. And I looked at it and I said, Carissa, I said, by God's grace, I'm going to be a preacher. I'll never afford any of this. We'll be paying for this when our kids graduate high school. So we went to this other really nice furniture store called Big Lots. And they were doing like their 20% off everything sale. So we're at Big Lots, and we go to the couch section. There's no leather from anywhere, and there's like 4 options. And I found the best of the 4, right? Less options, you can find one. And we looked at this couch, and I asked her, like, what about the couch? And she's like, that's the ugliest couch I've ever seen. It's like, no, that's the ugliest couch you've ever seen. This is like the 3rd ugliest couch you've ever seen. I said, but it's $200. I said, I've got $200. Like, I can pay for this, put it in the back of the truck, and you can sit on it today. And she begrudgingly said yes. And so we loaded the couch up, and we went home, and we put it in there. And, we just started setting up the place, and we both sat on it. You know what? A couch that is paid for is so much more comfortable than a couch you're making payments on. And it's so true. We still sit on that ugly, hideous couch today. The little bit of padding it had in it then, it doesn't have anymore. It's got dog hair on it, but I don't care because it's $200 and it's paid for. And it's so true in life, though. Life is just more fun when you don't have to worry about paying for everything you've got in your house. We should pay things off because he tells us this principle. God tells us this principle that better is one handful and 2 handfuls with stress. And if we just set aside for a second and think about it in our world and in our lives, and if you take it to your home, isn't it true that better is a car that is paid for than a really nice new, brand new car that just came out, but you've got payments on it that you can't afford? I'll tell you, my 1992 Honda drives better than a car that I would have to put payments in because I would never want to drive it anywhere. Better is a car that's paid for than a really nice new one with payments. Better is a smaller house that you can afford than a fighting over the payments and how you're going to make the payments of a big one. Better to have financial margin where you can help others than living paycheck to paycheck, wondering what will happen if the next paycheck doesn't come. And it doesn't matter how much you make. Trust me, it doesn't matter how much you make. It matters how you handle what God gives you. We're running out of time to share all these stories, but I was at a gas station this week, and I was filling up my truck, and a pretty really nice looking car pulled up next to me, and a young lady got out. She was young, if I can call her young. She got out, and she was wearing an apron from a restaurant that she worked at. And you could tell she'd obviously a very hard worker. It was covered in food and stuff, and she looked like she was exhausted. So surely she worked really hard. And she was on the phone talking to a friend, filling up her gas tank or putting money in her gas tank. And she said to her friend, she's like, I really like the job. It's really good work. It pays pretty well, but they're not going to pay me for 2 weeks. And I don't know how I can afford to get 2 weeks down the road without any money. And it just broke my heart because it's not how much we make, right? I mean, trust me, ministry, sometimes I want to find the restaurant outfit thinking I could maybe make a little more. It's how we handle what God gives us. Are we cutting back? Are we clearing out? Are we paying off? With the idea that one handful is better with peace, with margin, with space, with the ability to follow God. Better is one handful with tranquility than two with toil and chasing after the wind that we'll never catch. If we want that peaceful life, if we want the space to be the people that God has called us to be, then we have to create it. We have to cut back, clear out, pay off. Now, that doesn't mean is you can't have anything nice, right? Because that's the natural conclusion. You jump to, man, I went to church today. The preacher told me I shouldn't go out to eat, even though I didn't say that, but that's what you heard. The preacher told me I shouldn't go out to eat, and he told me I can't have anything nice, and I got to sell all my stuff, and all of the stuff. And that's not true. Right? In fact, if we spend less on everything, we have more to spend on a few things that are nice. When you don't have a lot of stuff, you can have some really nice things. In fact, I would suggest that it's better to have some nice stuff that you own than a bunch of junk that owns you. It's nice to sit on a junky couch that you paid for than the finest leather that stresses you out every month. It's better to have something you own, something you use, something that you enjoy, than a bunch of junk that fills your house and owns you. In fact, the biggest takeaway as we kind of process this is this. The richest people in the world are not those who have the most, but those who need the least. And I really believe that. It's not just something I found in the Bible or somewhere and someone told me. I really believe that the richest people in the world are not those who have the most, but those who need the least. And it's true, because think about it. You've seen shows where someone with a multimillionaire, billions of dollars, walks you through their brand new high-end house, everything electronic. They take you out to the garage and show you a fleet of cars in their garage. And you know how the story ends because you've heard it end before. They end up empty and hooked on something, or with no one there with them. They end up lost and desperate. And what they're looking for is what we find in Christ. But the richest people in the world are not those who have the most, it's those who need the least. And you'll see this if you've been to or if you go to a third world country. I had the privilege a few years ago to go to Haiti. It was the first time I'd been out of our country into a third world country. And we went with a group from church, a bunch of guys, and we went to build a church. And I told you about it before, but there was a group of people at church in Haiti, and they were just meeting on some open ground. And we showed up, and we had saved some money, and we contributed money. We're going to build this church for them. We showed up at the lot the first day, and it was full of junk. And so we all got together, and we cleared the lot. We went to the mission where we were staying, and all the Haitian kids, they were playing soccer with their only soccer ball. And I remember it caught my attention because they were just so happy, and they invited us to play, and they saw how bad I was, and they kicked me off the field. But overall, they were really happy kids, and they had nothing, but they were so excited because they didn't need anything. And the next day we showed up, and we began working at the property to build the church, and the first thing we had to do was lay a foundation. It was the hardest work I've ever done in my life. And a bunch of the Haitian guys, they came along and worked with us, and we were digging up the ground. And I'm no joke, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I was working hard because I was working for Jesus, and I was going to leave in a week. But these guys, that was their every day. And we were driving back. I got to know some of them, but one of them especially. And this one guy, his name was Sam, I think, best I could understood. And we were talking. He was always so happy at the end of the day when I just wanted to pass out in the back of the truck. And I said, Sam, how are you so happy? He said, oh man, life is good. I said, really? And he explained a little bit about his life. He has 6 kids. He had a wife. He had a little place he called his house. And said, life is good. And someone said, well, Sam, how much money do you make doing what we're doing? And he said so proudly, $4 a day. I was like, you got to be kidding. I've heard that, but that can't be true. $4 a day. He's like, yeah, it buys rice for my family, my 6 kids, and my wife. It provides a little bit for us. It's all we need. And I thought, no way. That's not true. It can't be. And sure enough, like we went to his house and he had 6 kids and a bag full of rice and it's everything he needed. And the last day we were going and we sang songs on the way back, and I'm not going to sing for you, but he was singing and he was so excited. He was singing the song, I'll Fly Away, the old hymn. And I remember just like looking at him, I was like, he was really worshiping. I said, Sam, he said, you like that song? I said, I like that song too. And he's like, yeah, but he's like, I'm really looking forward to the day that I fly away. And then I'm looking forward to the day that my kids fly away and we get to live with Jesus. And like, as a young college guy, it like broke my heart. I was thinking, I'm looking forward to that day too. And all the stuff I've got. I was like, wouldn't it be crazy if I live my life like less really is more? If I really believe that one handful with tranquility in Jesus is more valuable than 2 handfuls in chasing after the wind. I think our life is too valuable, our calling is too great, and our God is too good to live life like other stuff matters. Our calling is too great. Our God is too good to live life like other stuff matters. The richest people in the world are not those who have the most. That's what our culture tells us. But if you step outside of it, you'll see that the richest people in the world are those who need the least. Better is 1 handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Better is 1 handful with kids that love you than 2 handfuls with kids that don't know you or when you'll be home from work. Better is 1 handful with an intimate marriage where you really know your spouse and are known by your spouse than 2 handfuls where you're just going through life just trying to accomplish more. Better is 1 handful with vacation memories than 2 handfuls where you never spent time with kids. Better is 1 handful with intimate friendships than 2 handfuls where no one knows you. Better is 1 handful with the ability to make a difference. Better is 1 handful with a passion for Jesus than 2 handfuls with toil and turmoil and frustration and stress and chasing after the wind and no margin to be who God has called us to be. Let's pray.